Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar today. My name is Kalpesh Doshi, and I'm the Senior Director of Product at BrowserStack, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. So first of all, it's great to see so many people turning up. And before we get started, let's take a quick poll to see where everyone is joining us from. So please scan this QR code and please give your responses here. Wow, awesome. Wow, this is great. We have a very diverse group of participants today from different countries. Thanks for sharing that with us, guys. First of all, I'm very excited about this webinar because, as we all know, that having a top-notch UI UX, it's a non-negotiable for any company, be it a big or small. Every company relies on the various applications in the daily operations, and it is very essential that these applications have user-friendly UI and UX. Go to the next slide, please. So at BrowserStack, we are very committed to provide a complete testing solution for the internet, and we have been doing this for past 11 years. Our platform offers a comprehensive suite of automated and manual visual testings, and we have about 6 million registered users, which itself is a living testament to our commitment to provide a top quality testing solutions. In 2020, we launched Percy and have been making significant progress in the visual automated testing space ever since. And today I'm thrilled to announce that we have launched a brand new product called App Percy. App Percy is an AI-powered visual automation platform designed specifically for the native apps. And with App Percy, you can test your mobile applications on real iOS and Android devices and get instant access to 400 plus device and OS combinations. To know more about App Percy, you can visit our website. The website link will be pasted on the chat. We are also excited to share that we have an upcoming webinar on App Percy, which is our new product, and that's going to be on 23rd of March at 8 a.m. PST. So please look out for the registration link. And you can also register by scanning the QR code or following the link over there. So we hope to see you everyone over there for that webinar. Before getting started, I would like to highlight a couple of housekeeping items. The session will run for about 60 minutes. It is recorded session, so we'll be sending the recording after the webinar. I'd also like to point out that all the participants will be muted to enable an uninterrupted session for the speakers. And there will be a dedicated 10 minutes of Q&A at the end of the session. So you can use the Zoom Q&A window to send your questions in. All right, now let's jump onto the main event. We have an outstanding speaker with us today, John Hill. I would let John introduce himself.
Yeah.
John,
thank you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so a little bit about me. Well, first of all, let me just say it's great to be here. I'm really excited to kind of share what what I've learned over the years using great tools like Percy for visual regression testing. Specifically, I've been doing UI testing since 2012. I don't know, that's a long time now. But started with web UI in 2014 with Selenium. It was my first time getting my toes wet in that area, and I really found it to be really rewarding. So I've kind of chosen that as my career. And I've been very fortunate to kind of hop from company to company, finding opportunities to work on their web UIs. So I worked at CloudBees on the Jenkins UI, not the one that you think, not not the one you think, the good one, the Blue Ocean. That the other stuff, not my fault. That was before my time.
Yeah.
And also went to Ansible to work on the AWX project at Red Hat. Now IBM, and probably something else new in a year or two. I don't know. But now I'm working at the NASA Ames Research Center for KBR, working on the NASA OpenMCT project. And it's been great. And throughout that, I've been able to work with Selenium, Cypress, and Percy, and kind of been able to find ways to be successful, and found, made mistakes along the way. And so I'm here to kind of share any of that with you.
Awesome, John. Very, very thrilled to have you here. And I'm pretty sure, we can have a lot of learnings. This entire group can have a lot of learnings from you. So quick question. Can you tell us a bit more about OpenMCT?
Sure. Yeah. So OpenMCT is a generalized mission control framework, totally open source. You can use it it's used at different companies at NASA, JPL, a lot of different projects and missions use it. And it's out there in the open. And we have a really great, healthy open source community. It doesn't have to be for mission critical operations. We have a guy who uses it to, he hooks up to one of his driving simulator games on the PC, and he uses the same displays and everything like that to drive. We also have a Kerbal Space Program plugin. So it's open, it's out there, and it's all web-based. So the cool thing is that because it's web-based, it can run everywhere. And it could probably run on the Samsung refrigerator if we had a test for that. I don't know if you've included that in your support matrix, Kalpesh, but
we should.
could, yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, it's great. And so a little bit about me, I am a QA and a dedicated and a development team. So one to many. So I'm more of a, developer accelerator, or a multiplier or enabler more than anything.
Okay. Got it. Okay, thank you so much. So how do you approach visual testing for OpenMCT, and what tools, frameworks you use to automate this process?
Sure, yeah. So we use Playwright. So Playwright is one of the, I should say, I'm also a Playwright ambassador. So I had to call it out.
That's a cool jacket though.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, we use Playwright, and Playwright kind of drives Percy into the nooks and crannies of the application, and sometimes just into the, into the interesting areas. And then it's at that point, we use Percy to kind of take a snapshot of the DOM, and then we compare that to the previous baseline, and we compare that against all of the different platforms that we care about at the different resolutions. And we, previous to this, I've also used the Cypress and Nightwatch Percy integrations with really great success.
Got it. Okay. So how do you ensure your visual testing process is both thorough and efficient, especially given that the OpenMCT interface and the complexity of the OpenMCT?
So I guess really it comes down to where I think visual testing really shines, and where it kind of it isn't necessarily as useful. So what we really like to do is get the application into a state where we think it's going to be interesting, where we think that we are going to recognize that change is going to come. And then we take a single point in time screenshot, and then it runs against all the different browsers, all the different things and everything like that. And we keep that logically separate from our functional suites. And the goal for our visual testing is that those tests should never fail. Those tests should just be more or less information to the entire dev team and UX team to say, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And the paths that we follow to get there with Playwright are all functionally tested. So those never kind of fall apart.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Can you walk us through a use case where Percy helped you to catch a visual regression issue? Or otherwise
Yeah.
it might have been difficult?
Yeah, so that's the thing. That's really kind of the power of visual testing in general. And I don't have necessarily, one of the best examples I have wasn't actually on this project, it was on a previous project where we noticed that one of the modals at the top of the screen that would flash to say something has finished, something has finished, something has finished, wasn't, was kind of flaky. And we didn't know why. The functional tests, Cypress at the time, would show that that appeared. But what we didn't realize is that it appeared for a brief second, but not enough time for the visual testing framework to catch. And what it turned out to be a performance issue. It turned out that we had created the world's most efficient load testing tool that could, our front end was taking down the back ends because thousands of requests were being sent from the front end. And it just, the only way we caught it was, the only way we caught it was with a visual testing tool. And so that's really the power of visual testing. It's more, it's looking for the unknown unknowns instead of the known unknowns. And that's where, visual testing is kind of different from functional testing. And from my experience, I'm sure everyone else here has different experiences. So if you can get the application into an area that you think might be interesting or, might have areas of change, just keep running those snapshots, keep seeing, looking for the difference, because you never know if you're going to create the world's most efficient load testing tool.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And how much beneficial you think it is to kind of test on different browsers or the different browser version? Do you generally see the UI flakiness from browser to browser?
So that's a really interesting question. So the way that and it's different than if you had asked me that question 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, different answer. I think really the functional bugs that you're going to find by testing on the different browsers are going to be a little bit different than what you expect to find by using the different rendering engines. So really visual testing is, I think, more suited to testing on different resolutions, different browsers, different rendering engines than functional testing. From if I had to pay for an hour of GitHub Actions time, I'm going to spend that time running against Percy and running through all the different browser rendering engines than I would for running functional tests against all the different browsers that we have to support. Again, this is only speaking to kind of enterprise testing. This is not, I've never worked on a sales application or something that that doesn't that isn't in the basically anything in the enterprise is what I've been working on. So I know the areas that other people's have to work in with supporting different browser versions of the same browser, because you don't know who's going to access your website, is going to have a different experience for me. But from my experience of testing enterprise applications, where we kind of know the version of the rendering engine that they're going to be using in Firefox or Safari or Chrome, we find that the visual tests are much more suited for finding browser differences.
Got it. Awesome. I think that's very helpful. So let's shift gears here a little bit. Can you tell us about your experience with open source communities and how it has influenced your work with visual testing tools like Percy?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, the way I got started with Percy was because it was the only one that offered an open source plan. And it was, at the time I had just thought that, visual testing is this like overhyped thing that no one, that, it's just a sales gimmick, all that kind of stuff. And it really allowed our team to kind of test, get our feet wet, see if we're going to find value. And we did very quickly. But I don't think without an open source plan, I really don't think we would have been able to take that plunge. Now you have, free trials and, everything there to kind of facilitate that. But at the time when I first got started with Percy in 2018, that was the only way to go. And to speak more generally to the open source, I think, I've been doing this a while. I can say, it's kind of hard to divorce this idea that open source means free, or open source is kind of just generally available and has the same standards as a paid for product. And so that's, working for open source companies, I've always run into that, right? It's always hard for somebody to say, well, this open source contributor thinks that this feature is more valuable than this paying customer, for example. I think one of the most challenging parts about working in the open source is making sure that, everybody's happy, your free users, your paid for users, but at the end of the day, what it turns out is, I think working at, Jenkins and at Ansible, I just love the community. So the thing that closed source tools lack is a sense of community, getting together with other people that are using it. And you all know the Jenkins community, and you all know, or probably know, the Red Hat open source community. It's a great experience. It's more than just avoiding solving the same problem. It is finding other people that are might have an interesting idea or might be using it in a way that you don't even know about. So I think really open source is a really healthy part of any product.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, like, what is the most rewarding part working in open source?
Oh, solving somebody else's problem. Definitely. So that's the thing, is like, so if you go to our GitHub, you can see that we have some patterns and approaches that we had to solve along the way. And when you are, using visual testing tools, we'll give you basically, it's an opportunity to show you how to solve some of the general challenges that you might run into, without, depending on if somebody that's really kind and creates a tutorial and a demo app. I mean, once you can see something actually being used, it makes it easier anyways.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, so I think next question is for the audience here. Can we please have a poll? The poll is going to be about, have you tried any other open source tool in past, and how's your experience? I'll let audience take time and poll.
Oh, I can't vote. Damn it.
Even I can't vote.
Yeah.
Are we going to show the results live? Anup or Nazreen?
Yeah, we can show the results live.
Okay. All right. Awesome. There is quite a bit of diverse response over here. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for voting here. All right. Carrying on. So what are some of the most common challenges that teams face when it comes to visual testing, and how does visual testing tool like Percy help to address those challenges?
Yeah, so I think if we can break that into two different parts. What was the first? Let me talk about
the first part. Is what are the common challenges that teams face when it comes to visual testing?
Yeah, the most common problem is, how do you integrate it into your workflow? Very rarely, I think, somebody's starting from scratch and is doing both functional, performance, accessibility, and visual at the same time. If you are, that's great to have a greenfield project. But I think most of us already have established functional test automation. So I think the hardest part is, how do you kind of keep visual testing from becoming noisy? And how do you prevent it from becoming something that is ignored? So I think the best strategy, I think, to that is to kind of keep it on running in parallel and keeping it informational as you kind of find value from it over and over. You're going to find ways, as you would with any tool. But what you don't want to do is immediately ingrain it into everything you do. You want to kind of bring it in, and you'll find, depending on your team, exactly where it fits. And what was the second part of that question?
So the second part is, how does the visual testing tools like Percy help address those challenges?
Yeah. So the what Percy does is it has a very extensible API that can be used for all the different languages out there. So you don't have to do something like change the framework that you're using. You can use it with everything. So you can keep your same functional tests. And what's great about Percy is that there's almost guaranteed to be a way that plugs in, but Percy also provides their own scripting language. So let's say you don't necessarily have it, or let's say you have all of your visual tests in, let's say you have all of your functional tests in Selenium Java, but you have a different front end team. You can use something like Percy scripts or anything like that to kind of, kind of keep it there. Yeah, sorry.
Would you recommend any best practices for using Percy to the audience here, like based on your experience?
Yeah. So in terms of best practices, it's really about making sure that you are not testing functional things with visual testing. That's not really, from my experience, kind of the goal. Visual testing augments what the functional tests can't do. They can't tell you how something looks and feels. So you need to kind of keep those two things separate. And one of the hardest challenges I've always faced is time, specifically the browser clock. And so you'll see it on our repo, some approaches on how to get around that. But effectively, the changes that you think that you would have to ignore, the changes that you're going to run into that would change visually are totally manageable by either your Selenium, Cypress, or Playwright tool. And where not, that's something that Percy allows. You can go in and use Percy CSS to make fundamental changes to your application just for the visual checks or the tests, as well as ignoring certain areas. So it's a challenge on every time I've used visual testing. It's managing the browser clock, and where your framework fails, Percy can kind of take over.
Yeah, perfect, makes sense. So in your opinion, what is the current state of visual testing? Like, how much of the awareness the companies have about the visual testing, and what is the future that you see for visual testing?
I think I don't think it's as widely used as it should be, frankly. And I think that what we're going to see is just more companies ingraining it into their process. And I think really one of the biggest things that I've seen is how visual testing can bring a QA to the table, or to a table that they didn't once have access to. So one practice I've followed for the visual tests is including the UX designers in the review. So the UX designers, they create their storybook representation. They tell the devs, hey, I want it to look like this. Then the developers do that. And there's always this missing piece that QA misses out on, which is showing this is what the developer did based off of this screenshot or this design that you did. So something like Percy is great because you can take these changes or take the tests and say, hey, UX designer, is this really what you wanted? And very often you'll find, oh, no, I didn't actually want it to look that way. Or the designer will make a change, right? They'll make a change that they intentionally made, but have no idea how it maps to where another part of the application. And that's really something that's absent.
So visual testing can really bridge a gap between what designer wanted and then what ultimately QA sees, right? I mean, that entire gap can be bridged with visual testing effectively.
Yeah, and I really, where I see visual testing going is it's almost like the designers will eventually take over. Like the designers need visual testing. I really see designers kind of, it won't be necessarily a QA tool. I think it'll be a designer tool as much as anything else.
Yeah. In your opinion, what kind of companies, or maybe just call it businesses, should adopt visual testing? I mean, is it more consumer facing only, or you think that the B2Bs should also be doing this?
Yeah, I would say any company that has the time for functional tests and functional test automation should probably look at it. I don't think I would break it down by segment. I would almost say that it's more of a, if you have time to do automated tests, and some pretend that they don't, right? Some pretend that they don't, and you're not going to sell them with visual testing. If they can't get a single Selenium script running, they're not going to, you take everything with it. But I think every team that cares about the rendering issues, and I've been very fortunate to work on projects that didn't have to do the whole gamut of multiple browsers, older versions, and all of that stuff. So I think the businesses that are specifically impacted by the wild west of general users out there accessing their website with a random browser or whatever are definitely the most susceptible to rendering problems that are caught with visual testing.
Right. Makes sense. What advice do you have for other teams who is looking to adopt visual test automation for their projects? Like any getting started tips, advices?
No, so the Percy documentation is great. Great at getting going. There's a lot of getting started boilerplate projects out there. The only thing I would say is don't change frameworks just for Percy. If you can only find Cypress documentation, don't think you have to change off of whatever you're using. I think that's it. I would, again, just be like super clear here. Don't let your visual tests become noise. Let them become a signal, and then start making them checking. So one thing that we do is we still today don't have pass-fail criteria on our project, because we just don't have the automated tests in place to get to that point, and we will soon. So just keep it a ramp. Make sure that you get started with an example project like NASA Open MCT to kind of see how it's going to go, and find a community of visual testers that you can work with if you have questions.
Perfect. All right. I think before we go into Q&A, we have a bunch of questions lined up. So before we go into that, if anyone is interested in learning more about BrowserStack, please respond to a hand raiser. We'll be happy to set up a demo. So let's do that, and let's go into the Q&A section. So let me first read out the first question. What is your favorite diff sensitivity setting? Strict, recommended, or relaxed?
For me? Oh, sorry, for me?
Yeah, so either you can answer or I can answer, but
okay,
yeah, what's your opinion?
Sorry. So right now we are, the great thing is that you can change it at the cloud level. So you can change it on the cloud level to tune it if you need to. So if you get to a certain point in your development cycle where you have a whole bunch of incoming changes all over the place, you can slide it all the way to the less strict. We keep it in the kind of the middle one. Has been pretty good for us. I'm not really aware of anything that we've missed. I think the conversation we usually have is, darn, I wish we had a test for this. Not, I wish we had changed the sensitivity.
Yeah. And just to answer the question from my perspective, I would keep it at recommended. And again, it all depends on how strictly you want to kind of have your UI elements examined, right? If you want to go strict, of course, that is an option, but it will for the slightest of the change in the UI or the pixel, it will alert you. And if that is what is needed, if that is what your UI demands, then definitely go for strict. Otherwise, recommended is the best option. All right, going to the second question, John, this is specifically for you. At what stage of SLDC do you include visual testing tools?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can speak generally about that. So testing tools, if you look at the SDLC and you see of how costly a bug would be, the further left you move it, the better. So I think, I would answer that as I would answer all tests, is if you can do something pre-merge and on a PR, that's where you're going to get the most value. I think there's tremendous value doing it at other parts of your pipeline. or other parts of your process. But I think right before the developer is about to merge it, have a review, a personal review. Say, is this what you wanted? Is this what you intended? Not everyone is able to, keep the tests, in the initial merge. So I would just say, as soon as you're able to, do it. And if you need to set up time, if you have like a 2-week sprint or a 3-week sprint, just dedicate some time to review the results with the team, as you would, maybe review the general testing report, right? Let's say you have to report on the number of bugs to your team. That would also be a good time to talk to the review. But sometimes it's more of a, personal one-on-one conversation. So find the time, but as early as possible, just like everything else.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for answering that. All right, next question. Can Percy be used to skip pixel differences and only validate the presence of components? I can answer that. So yes, Percy does support the storybook testing. So you can test the storybook components. If you're talking about the layout testing, which means you just want to test the layout, that is something in the roadmap. So it is coming very soon. We are already working on it. So that thing is going to come very soon, which is a layout testing part. All right, next question. Will the link to that repository John mentioned be provided? John, is that something?
Yeah. Just it's github.com/NASA/OpenMCT.
Okay.
It's just.
we'll share that link with the audience here once we respond along with the video. All right. Is Percy better used in merge pipelines or trains, or as a monitoring tool to check changes after they have been merged? John, you want to take that first, and then
we do both. So we do both. So we do pre-merge checking, and then after the merge has been done, we do it. We're also developing a nightly view. So what we are doing is we have a pattern that we've developed for doing per-merge testing and nightly testing with the same, Percy thing. So it's possible that when you're just talking about doing smaller areas, that you would just want to run a subset. And then if you need to run a more comprehensive nightly, as you would do with the nightly, or maybe you only have certain access to certain test environments, you can also do that. That's where it gets a little tricky with the baseline management. And so the pattern that we're merging up soon, there's a PR for it if you just want to take a look at it, is how we're approaching that.
Yeah, perfect. I think you answered. I had the same answer, but there is a follow-up on that. We work in a company with many pipelines running side by side. So updating baselines on a per feature branch level could cause complications running tests that don't have the same changes present. It was more of a statement, but okay. I think your answer kind of addresses that.
So if you're saying that feature changes are going in not as comprehensive, I could see that being a problem. So maybe that would be a good time to create more of a nightly scenario where you can capture nightly against that. But the other thing you could do is you can make an assumption that only that feature branch is changing for that single component, but everything else is on main or master. You could gear that up a little bit, but it sounds like in your scenario, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to capture it, everything post-merge as well. And you could run it by hand if you needed to, if you wanted to, with your developer team, pre-merge. You don't need, that's the thing. You don't need, everything doesn't have to be triggered by CI. You can do it by hand at your local machine and get the same feedback.
Yep. All right. Next one. What is the process in your organization with approving Percy visual changes? Who is responsible to do it? How do you cope with large changes on a daily basis? Is person who is approving familiar with all the changes?
Yeah. So we don't. So in my experience, I don't have a single process. The cool thing is that you can set it up so that each user that does approve it has an associated user account with it. So so when you do find something that shouldn't have been approved, you can always trace it back to that. We currently don't have a process in place that says this person is going to do it. We probably could use one. So I'm interested, learning from the general community if you have one yourselves. But
yeah, so in general, and just this is basis our experience with working with many customers, right? So see, every company sets up their own processes, right? Either if your builds are executed as soon as you check in the code, which means if it is in your development pipeline, then of course the developers go ahead and review and also approve the build. But like you said, if it is post merge, right, which is in your QA branch is where you are running the test, that is when the QA is generally, there is one approver and reviewer who kind of generally goes in, reviews and approves the build so that it can be merged into the master, right? So I think it generally depends on what kind of branching strategy that you are working with, and the process can be set accordingly. Okay, next one. Is it possible to use or adjust Percy for visual checks of pages with dynamic content? For example, news website where a homepage changes on our basis while still maintaining the same header, right rail and footer sections? Yes, it is possible. It is possible to just test the layout or the component so that the dynamic pages does not kind of give you the false positives.
And I can hop in to add something to that. So another thing you can do with your you can block those changes from Percy even seeing it with your framework. So something like Playwright can actually just totally ignore content from coming in, or totally block it out from the DOM before Percy gets access to it. It's pretty easy to do that. And I think with Selenium 4 now that's possible there as well, where you can block individual network requests. And so that's also something to do. Also, if you do that, your results become more reliable. so blocking it earlier at the framework level is also a really good pattern to follow for that sort of thing.
Thank you. Do we have a demo video how to use visual testing with use case designed by UX designer? Also, how easy it's to adopt by the tester. So the demo video will be shared in a response. So Nazreen, let's please take a note of this and let's share the demo video along with the response to this webinar. All right, next one. Where is it better to include visual test in the development workflow? I think it's a repeat question, but you want to just touch on that again a little bit? Where is it better to include visual test in the development workflow?
Yeah, where is it better to include it in the developer workflow? I think it's better to include it on any sort of front end changes that you're going to have. So I wouldn't include it, I wouldn't trigger it by any changes coming from the back end necessarily. I think if you're going to spend the time, you would just want it to come from your front end developer team, and those that are more likely to have a relationship with your UX designer who they're interpreting the results from. I think people that are just squashing bugs and all that kind of stuff maybe wouldn't be the people you would focus on, or the developers you would spend your time with. If you are a developer, front-end developer, and you are looking at using something like Percy, I think if you are more responsible for a design library or larger components that are shared with other parts of your team, that's really where I would make that a regular part of your process. I wouldn't necessarily have everyone do it. If it doesn't fit into every developer's workflow.
Thank you so much. Visual testing applicable only for front end or APIs too? So generally visual testing is for the front end, but let's say if your API changes are impacting the front end, that's when you want to make sure that you do the visual testing of the front end as well. But when we say visual testing, that is the front end testing itself. Okay, next one. My concern is the maintenance and reviewing the noise that each test run would create. Is this manageable process? Is it smart enough to dismiss resolution issues or browser? I'll let you answer that. I mean, if it is specific to Percy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's the noise is going to be in all tests. I have noise in my unit tests. There's noise everywhere. And as test professionals, it's our job to put as much signal as we can. And so I think really I mean, it's the same. It's the same for every type of testing. Visual testing could be prone to noise, but not any more than any other type of testing. From my experience, you just have to make sure that it's a you need to have a maturity part of your testing process as you would of anything. So you wouldn't want to start failing automated performance tests right off the bat, and you wouldn't make many friends doing that as well. So just doing what you can to kind of gradually ramp it up, and it really goes back to something I said earlier. Don't just throw it in everywhere. It's just like anything else. You have to go up. And so one of the approaches that I did when I was working at Ansible with Percy for the first time is I kind of kept it on the sideline. And when it found a bug, that's when I brought it forward to the rest of the team and said, hey, if we continue to invest more in this is the value that you're going to see. So you can do things to kind of keep it on the sideline until you find the bug. And then you are also the guy bringing the bug to them. So anyways, it's not any more prone to noise than anything else.
Wow, perfect. Can Percy validate the visual difference in system-defined custom font? Yes. So the way Percy works is it captures the snapshot and then renders it on all the browsers that you want it to be rendered on. So yes, even the system-defined custom font, it will be able to tell the visual difference on that. Can Percy detect any visual diff for shadow DOM elements? Yes, we have a shadow DOM feature. So the short answer is yes, it will detect a visual difference for the shadow DOM elements. Is there a Percy SDK for Node.js to wait for build results within execution of JavaScript test suite? Yes, Percy has an SDK for the Node.js. So please check it out and shout out if there is any help that is needed. You can reach out to our support team and we'll be able to help if there is any specific help needed over there. Can we get into a sample project to see the exact working of the visual testing tools? Yes, there is a sample project that Percy provides. So once you sign up, you will be able to see the sample project and you will be able to try out the visual testing on your own. And again, please reach out to the support team if at all there are any issues or you want any help with Kickstart. This is specifically for John. John, have you used Backstop.js previously? If so, what major benefits do you think Percy has in comparison to Backstop?
No, I have not used it. My coworker at my previous company, previous project I had worked on had, and he didn't like it. And so he was glad to see during the interview process we weren't using it. I don't necessarily have the experience with it, but I understand that it works. It works well in certain scenarios. I just don't have the experience with it.
Perfect, thank you. What are some best practices for reviewing in your organization? What does the review process look like? Who should review it from? I think that question is repeated, so I think we can skip that. Think currently Percy supports Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, Safari on iPhone, Android. For some projects, there are breakpoints specific to screen sizes, large screen, tablet, and mobile devices. Are there any ways to test tablet-sized device using Percy? Yes, you can specify the resolution within the Percy script. You can reach out separately to the support, and we can tell you in more details on how this can be done. Or we will reach out to you separately, as a follow-up and show you how this can be done. But it is possible. Does Percy allow to compare the UI of a page with the mockups made via another tool like Figma? Comparing manually each color, font, family size, etc. for each component of the page is very time consuming.
Not
Yes.
that oh, go ahead. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so we are not integrated directly with Figma, but if there are UI pages that you have made in the Figma, you can actually upload those mockups on Percy, and those can be used as a baseline. And then any build that you kind of create, that can be compared with those baselines that are created on the Figma. But at this point, we don't have a direct integration. But yes, this is doable still. Can Percy validate the visual difference in system-defined custom font? I think that's a repeat question. Is visual testing same as the snapshot testing? Yes, it is same. Like the way Percy operates, like I said, we take the snapshot and then we render the UI on multiple browsers. So yes, you can call it as same.
Kalpesh, if I might hop into that
Yeah.
one, are you?
Please.
I think that person may be speaking to playwright snapshot testing, and that's something
okay,
that I
if you can
really
elaborate
wanted.
on that.
Yeah, I really wanted to spend some time on that. So the difference between Percy playwright testing, snapshot testing, and sorry, let me say it again. The difference between, there's a lot of P's here, Percy snapshots and playwright snapshots
Playwright
is,
snapshot.
yeah, playwright snapshots are very, they serialize the DOM in a very specific way that allows you to do very quick diff comparisons. And it's not suited for the sort of feedback review process or anything like that. However, it is also very good at doing the very specific things that you would want to compare. So the way I've used it and use it today is when we want to detect per pixel or per component changes in a very graphic thing, like a plot, right? That's where you would want to use both, but that's where playwright snapshots are very good at getting to the point to make a pass fail. Like if it can be pass fail, it will be pass fail. But for everything else that you would want to have kind of the broader conversation, or if you want to look at more interesting things that are harder to kind of get into that specific state, that's where really you would want to use something like a Percy snapshot.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying that, John. All right. If any validation fails, does Percy automatically create a defect in the Jira or any defect tracking tool? Yes, Percy integrates with Jira and other defect tracking tools. So during the review process, if you think that a bug needs to be filed, you can easily do it in one click. Is there any demo or seminar available for the Percy visual testing? Yes, we'll be sharing a demo along with as a follow-up to this webinar. So yes, you will have those demos available once we respond to this webinar. Chromatics also does visual regression testing. What makes Percy a better approach? John, do you have any experience with Chromatics?
Sorry, no, I haven't heard of it.
Got it. We will respond to this answer. We will give a good difference between Chromatics and Percy. So we'll share that along with the response to this email. Great. I think that's all the questions I have. I hope that we covered most of them. If there are any more questions, I would request you guys to kind of share that offline as well. And if there are any questions which we have not answered, we'll definitely share the answers to those offline. With that, I think that puts an end to this webinar. And I would like to give a big thank you to John. Thanks for your time today, John. It was really, really valuable. And I think the question itself speaks for it, right? I mean, people really loved all the knowledge that you had to share. So thank you so much for taking your time today.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me talk to everyone. As somebody in the open source, I just love, helping people solve problems that are already solved with tools like Percy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone. Have a nice day. Bye. Thank you, John.
Thanks.